Hey, Kevin here, and I get to welcome you today to the very first 5-Minute Friday. Now, this is inspired by a YouTuber I love, Peter McKinnon. He does mostly like filmography, videography, and just vlog type stuff. Really awesome channel, and he does a thing called 2-Minute Tuesdays, and I really love those, and it inspired me, and it's something that I wanted to do. I've always wanted to make shorter videos. So I think by doing this, I'm committing to making shorter videos. The thing is, 2 minutes, that's short. When I committed to doing shorter videos, I went from like 45 minutes to 20. So, I don't know if I could get to 2. So I'm going to do 5 minutes or less. That means some of these videos might actually end up being less than 2 minutes. But as long as I keep it in my goal of getting the tutorial done in under 5 minutes, I've hit my goal. As for the tutorials themselves, what I'm going to be talking about, mostly CSS tips, tricks, and fun stuff we can do. Occasionally there will be some JS because you guys are just always clamoring for it, but the focus of it will be CSS stuff. And speaking of CSS stuff, in today's video we're going to be looking at how we can vertically center stuff in CSS. There's a bunch of ways to do it now. In the old days, there wasn't so many, and it could be really hard, and when you finally figured it out, then all of a sudden this whole responsive thing came around, and that just threw everything out the window because it would resize and it wasn't centered anymore, and it was a pain in the butt. But these days, it's gotten so much easier, and it's gotten so easy. I thought of 5 different ways that we can do it, so let's start that timer and get this started.
Alright, so we are here in CodePen, so the link to this will be in the description below if you want to come in here and play with it yourself. Now the first one we're going to be looking at here is the table. This is the old school way of doing it. So to do this, I have a class on there of table, and on my table here I can give this just a display of table. So we can get anything to act like a table. It doesn't actually have to be a table. So I have my div there is my table. And now I can say that the paragraph inside of my table is actually a display table cell. So it's going to act just like a table cell. And that opens up the vertical align and that we can set to middle. And just like that, I am vertically aligned. Now this is a really old school way of doing it, so we probably don't want to be using it, but this reminds me of one of the first ways we would do it. Nowadays though, there's a lot better ways of doing it. One of them is with absolute positioning. So I'm just going to scroll down here a little bit and we can take a look at doing it with that. So I'm going to do dot absolute, and on here what I need to do is actually we'll skip that for a second, and we have my absolute p, and so on here I can do a position of absolute and top of say 50%. The only problem is it's disappeared because it's going to 50% of my body. So on my absolute here, on the parent, I'm going to give this a position of relative to fix that. If you're not too familiar with relative and absolute positioning, I do have a video that talks a little bit more about those. Now this does present one issue, is it's not actually perfectly centered. So one thing I'm going to do here is just let's just do a width of 100% to keep it right in the middle that way. But it's actually off on the up and down a little bit. So what we can do here is add in a transform of translate y minus 50%, and that pulls it up on its own width. So this is dealing with the width of the parent, and this is on its own width just to get it right there perfectly in the center. Now if we keep on going, we have a flexbox one here. Now flexbox was the first one that really started making things super easy to do. So and there's more than one way to do this with flexbox, but we're going to take a look at the simple one, which is a display of flex. Align items center, and it's vertically centered. Now it's not taking up the full width, so we had that same issue. We could also do a justify items center on this and fix that, and not justify items, justify content, and get that centered like that. I could also give it back a width of 100%, similar to what I did up here on that one. Another way we can do it is, if we come down here, I have a grid one. So with this, instead of what we just did, I can do my grid and display of grid, and we can do an align item. So I'm going to we can do the same thing, center, and justify content center, or you can see we didn't even actually need that this time. Another thing you can do to perfectly center something with a grid is place items center. And look at that, one line gets you there. So a little bit faster than what we were doing with the flexbox here. Place items is actually just a shorthand for align items and justify items, I believe it is. So this is a shorthand for the two properties, but you can use that to nicely place something in the middle of a grid parent. The nice thing with flexbox and grid compared with these is you don't have, on my table I also had to do something on the child. On this one I also had to do something on the child to get it to fit. So we're playing with both of them. With these solutions I can just stick with that, but there is another solution which is with margins. This works with whether you're using your grid or your flexbox. So I'm going to do a display grid on here. This one I do need to use my child for though, but margin P. And I can just do a margin of auto on here. And on grid and with flexbox, auto margins on the top and bottom of something will center it in that space. This is something that didn't exist before. So if you're doing it on a regular block level element, that will not work. But on the child of a grid or flexbox, so if I change this to display flex, it's still going to work, which is a really nice, cool trick that you can use. And sometimes I just find that a little bit easier because it's just one thing I want to pop right in the center. There are other options in this. You can use align self or something like that, but we're running out of time, so there we go.
And there you have it, the first 5-Minute Friday. I hope you liked it. We got plenty more of these coming. Got lots of quick ideas, tips, tricks, and just fun things we can be doing. If you can think of another way to vertically center it, please leave it down in the comments below. There are other ways that you can probably pull it off as well that I didn't mention here. If you liked the video, please hit the thumbs up. If you haven't yet subscribed, please consider subscribing. And of course, until next time, don't forget to make your corner on the internet just a little bit more awesome.